Don, this was a long road from the moment when you wanted to make the film to the finishing, and it took you. I'm wondering if you could talk about finding your way to the structure of the film.
Huh. Yeah, this was a long time in coming. I had the idea of doing a movie about Miles had kind of come into my radar for many years. People talked about it for a long time, and all the different ways that they were trying to put it together, and different people that they were trying to put it together with. But I guess really all came to the fore when Vince Wilburn, Miles' nephew, announced that I was going to play him when he was inducted in the Rock and Roll. Oh, there he is right there, Vince Wilburn, Miles' nephew. And he said that they were going to do a movie about his life and that I was going to play him. And it was sort of a pronouncement. And then, thank you, Vince. And that kind of started the ball rolling, so to speak, with people reaching out and different producers getting in touch with me and trying to figure out a way to do it. And I was presented with several takes on it that I thought were kind of standard biopic stories, kind of cradle to grave stories, chronological, the events in his life that were about when he met Charlie Parker, or about when he left that and went to these different sort of forms of music that he experimented with for his entire life. And I just wasn't interested in doing a story in that way with this particular artist, this singular artist who was always about trying to do it differently than it had been done before. And for me, it always felt like it was as much a mandate for him that he go forward and reach for something forward as much as it was to move away from the past. So I wanted to make a movie that I thought Miles Davis would have wanted to star in. So to me, it was always kind of Don Cheadle is Miles Davis as Miles Davis in Miles' head, and when I spoke to Vince, I spoke to the family, and I said, I kind of want to make a movie like that. Is that something that you guys would be cool with, rather than a standard telling of the story? They were like, yeah, I think that he would have preferred to do something that was different and more dynamic than something that a documentary could do a lot better, or something that the radio play could do a lot better. So that became when Stephen Bagelman and myself, who co-wrote this, kind of looked at each other and shook hands and said, okay, we're not going to make the chronological A to B movie, and we're going to make something that's closer to us, to a movie like Toto La Hero or All That Jazz. It was like, yeah, let's do that.
And for you, how did you handle the shifting of your various roles? I mean, in the creative process. In other words, you're starring in the film, you're writing it, you're directing it.
Drugs.
Oh, okay. That's the answer?
No, it was daunting. I mean, I was glad that I had a lot of time to do it. And to be honest, I tried to give it away. If it hadn't come together 3 years ago and it just wasn't going to be possible and it had fallen apart, I would have been relieved, I think, in a way, because it was just so hard. We came close so many times, and the budget started at 20 at one point, and it was down to, can we make it for 18? Can we make it for 15, 12, 10, 11? It just kept, to where we finally ended up with this budget, I think is 8.5, where we finally settled, and still had to come up with various ways to put the money together, including, an Indiegogo campaign to get us over the hump and make up the gap. So it was really every step of it was really difficult. But I'd say in the year before it finally all came together, it started feeling more like a mandate to do it than something that I could get away from. And I just had to. I didn't want to finish having not done it. So we just said we have to pull out all the stops and we have to do whatever we have to do to find it. And thankfully we were able to partner with Bifrost and I'm Global and Kevin Hart and Praz and my producer's cousin and everybody else and a bunch of people on Indiegogo and found the money and put it together.
And Emayatzy and Michael, what was your experience of working on this film like with Don as a director and as an actor?
Well, for me, it was just a dream. It was a dream come true, to work with someone like Don, where it's about the artistry. He's an actor's actor. It's not about anything else, So for me, he's one of those people that it's always been, oh, I would love to one day, So to have that happen, it was just so special for me. And then on this kind of project, something that is so close to his heart. So those two things coupled together, his artistry and something that's a passion for him, I couldn't have asked for anything better. I know it's going to go well. I know it's in very capable hands. And so for me to have the opportunity to portray a woman, Miss Francis, as I affectionately call her, it meant so much to me. Miles and her relationship with Miles meant so much. And it was an honor. It was an honor. I looked forward to it every single day. And it was a real pleasure.
Thrilling for me too, I've been a huge fan of Don's for years, and this just sort of happened out of the blue, and delightfully so. And from day one, it was just, let's go make something great. A real collaboration. Take it, run with it. Let's have some fun. Let's go far, see what happens. Just got right into it. It felt really beautifully comfortable and easy too, which was fantastic. I don't know if it's everything to do with Mr. Cheadle here, we just jumped in and did it, and it felt great. And the subject matter as well was thrilling and fascinating to me. I'm a huge music fan and own Miles' music, and I play the saxophone, as does Don. So maybe there was some sort of kismet there as well. I don't know, but I'm just grateful to have been a part of it and had a blast working on it.
And I think to piggyback on the music part of it, that was really for me the main driver of it, because I wanted to be able to put all of Miles' music into the film, and I mean all of it that we had the rights to do. I mean, there's much more that were outside of our ability to put in the film, but I didn't want to be stuck with one period of his music. And I think had we told it in a way that was chronological, was cradle to grave, was at kind of a standard telling, we would have been pigeonholed into these specific moments that coincided with the music, and that would not, and they would have all been really given short shrift. I think I much more wanted to approach the music in the way that I experienced his music when I listened to it, from everything to Bitches Brew to Kinda Blue to Agartha, which opens this, which is nuts, and up to and including we end this movie with Pharoah Monch and Miles' music and Miles' voice, which is when he was at the end of his life, he was recording with Easy Mo Bee, and he's done stuff with Prince that would have come out, and he would have been working. I think if he were alive today, he would have been working with Kendrick Lamar, and he would have been trying to do stuff with D'Angelo. So it's just that's the way his music was going, and it all feels like it's different soundtracks to different elements. I see stories in my mind when I listen to his music. So I wanted to create a piece that, the music could support those stories. So I didn't want it to necessarily have to be, we're in the 60s, so now we have to use the music that he did with the supergroup, or we're now coming into 70s, so it has to be Bitches Brew. I'm like, well, why can't we use Bitches Brew in 1958 if it makes sense? Why can't we use Kinda Blue in 1969 or 1970 if that's where we feel like the movie wants to be? So that was another reason I wanted to construct it that way, let the music kind of guide the story as well.
Hi. Could you talk about how Robert Glasper got involved and what that collaboration process was like?
Robert was somebody who was introduced to me by Vince, again, Miles' nephew, Vince Wilburn, musician himself, and has an album coming out this year, doing, redoing some of Miles' music. So he was an easy kind of a connection. I talked to Herbie about him, and Herbie's like, yeah, that's a cat I listen to. I like Rob. And he's someone who is steeped in jazz and is really serious about that music, but is also thoroughly modern, won the Grammy for his very popular album, the Black Radio. So he got all, he gets it all. And he is someone that I worked very closely with in constructing a lot of this stuff. A lot of these things that you hear, like Nefertiti, that's Rob, that's not the Davis Quintet, and it sounds a lot like them to me. So he was able to recreate that music and also understand that milieu and play in that mode for music that we needed, different cues that we needed to be straight ahead, jazz. But also a lot of the cues that we did together were things that we just went in the studio and just kind of came up with. I would play stuff, he would play stuff, he would, there was one cue that we're on where I wanted this bass riff to go a certain way and I was kind of singing it and noodling on it. He goes, just play it. I'm like, I don't play bass. He's like, you're playing the bass right now. Just play it and we'll figure it out. And so it just kind of, that started this, really, really cool dynamic between us where we were both felt free to kind of bring our musical ideas to it. And he was just a great collaborator, a great musician.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Hill. I'm from WBGO Radio, the premier jazz station probably in the world. I want to ask you, Mr. Cheadle, how do you think jazz enthusiasts, or how do you hope, rather, jazz enthusiasts take this film and the music and the portrayal of Miles?
That remains to be seen. Obviously, I don't know how it will be received. I hope that they come to it with an expansive viewpoint that Miles had. In the movie, obviously, one of the first things he says is when, the reporter says jazz, and he stops him and says, don't, it's not jazz. Don't label what I do as jazz. It's trying to box me in. It's social music, and that's out of Miles' mouth. So, I know that for many people that I've spoken with while we were developing this, people kind of left off Miles. Certain people left off of Miles when he started, when he left acoustic and became electric and started doing things that purists, quote unquote, felt was a violation of who he had been and what he had done before. But that was never what Miles said he was. People were, trying to lay a sign on him that he had never put on himself. He was always someone, not unlike Dylan, who went to where their inspiration led them and was always trying to find the new thing or the next thing and deal with the sonics of the day. And a lot of other people that I've spoken with who've come to know and love Miles didn't even know about Miles until they heard albums like Bitches Brew and the Jack Johnson stuff, things that were much more quote-unquote rock and roll, that were not pure jazz, that allowed them to then sort of go back and find the music that had come before. They had never heard of Miles Davis. So there's a lot of different entry points to his music depending on who you are and what moves you and what you define as the kind of music that you connect to. So he's many, many things. He's multifaceted, and I think that's what the movie is trying to represent, a multifaceted artist, not strictly a jazz musician.
Great job with the movie, by the way. I know you've been working on this for a long time, because I remember you talking about it 10 years ago. I was curious about the overall story, which kind of is sort of like the framing device for his life, which is basically him with the tape and the Rolling Stone writer and all that. I was curious about where that story came from, and because obviously there were people there who was... So I'm curious about why you decided to use that as kind of the running storyline and where you got that information from.
Well, like many, I've been famously a part of a couple, biopics that, and have sat next to the people that I'm portraying in the movies. I was, Paul Rusesabagina was a part of Hotel Rwanda, and I did a movie called Rebound, and Earl Manigault was one of the people that I dealt with, and he was there a lot. And the Rat Pack and a lot of people from Sammy's life were with me. And the scenes would come up in the script, and I would look to Paul and I would say, "So is this pretty much how it is?" And he'd kind of go, and it's enough, it's close enough. We were trying to do it, and what we all know in these real stories is that to some degree they are all historical fiction. In some degree, everyone's taking poetic license, because clearly you can't encapsulate someone's life in 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is. There are characters that are elided, there's characters that are taken out, there's characters created, scenes omitted, things taking place in different places. We know that this is what has to happen in a film. So I didn't want to attempt to be playing cute with the story and saying this is a true story. I wanted the storyteller in the movie, being Miles Davis, to say, if I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to tell it in this fashion. And I wanted it to be creative, and I wanted it to be interesting, and I wanted it to be different. And that was the framing of the story, and that narrative, I thought, would allow me to do that. And the Dave Brill character is a composite of many characters, many people that at that particular period were trying to get these interviews from Miles, many because they thought they would be the last ones. His obituary had been written during that period of time. Because no one knew who the Howard Hughes of jazz was, what his story would be. And other people were trying to get the comeback story. So Dave Brill is based on, he's a composite of several different people during that period of Miles' life. And I thought that the fighting to come back and the trying to find your voice and writer's block and being creatively sort of shut down was relatable to everybody, more than trying to figure out how to specifically demonstrate Miles' quote-unquote genius. Because the music for most people, jazz specifically, if we're going to just talk about jazz, for many people is, people are at arm's length with it as far as their ability to understand it. It's very complex. It's highly constructed. It's as dense as classical music. And if you don't get it, quote unquote, it's for most people it just sounds like music that's in the background of a party, or something that they hear in an elevator. They don't understand what's happening with the music. And it's also not hits. We're not able to take, there's no 3-minute Miles Davis song. There's no 2-minute and 30-second Miles Davis song. His songs are 10 minutes, 9 minutes. They're expansive. They require you to really focus and stay with the music. And it's a very oral experience as opposed to a cinematic one where pictures are driving the day. So it was trying to strike a balance between how to use the pieces that would support the film, but that would also demonstrate the breadth and scope of his music. And this particular way to tell the story, I thought, would allow me the sort of landscape to do that.
Congratulations on a really terrific movie. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, there's so much humor, and Miles' sense of humor is just hilarious. I wonder if you could talk about how much fun it was to inhabit his sense of humor.
Well, I got a lot of stories from Vince, who spent a lot of time with Miles and toured with him, and some of the things he said I couldn't put in the movie, obviously, but he would say there was a couple of twins that there's a set of twins that Miles known later in his life. I don't remember exactly where he had met them or why they were around at that point, but Vince said he called them same thing, so. You walk by and go, that is same thing. And So just things like that, I wanted to make sure that, because it's not something that people talk about a lot, about Miles' sense of humor. I think a lot of people believe he was just this intimidating, imposing force that was, someone to be, scared of. And obviously, if you listen to his music, if you hear what's happening, it's full of whimsy. His music's full of passion and insight, and lyrically, he's quoting things that are humorous, and so obviously the band is not just monolithic. So I wanted that to be a big part of it too, and I think it helps carry the story along and keeps it moving as well. So I think humor is always a big part of any story, and even if it's tragic, I think you want to try to find the place where you can have people laughing, and vice versa. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that Miles' humor was a part of the movie.
Hi, can you talk a little bit about that closing sequence? Because clearly, there's a real moment that happened, that Miles played a trumpet that looked like that and was dressed the way you were dressed. And Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter were actually involved in it. But it's Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter today. And it's a tune that I think Ewan Glasper wrote. And he's got a hashtag, social music, on his vest, which is, of course, today. So were you trying to connect that moment with this moment and erase some sense of time? Or,
Yes.
what was the creative process in putting that together?
Yes. What you got was exactly what I was attempting to express. That for me, the music is not dead. For me, Miles is ostensibly not dead. And for those who don't know, who have not been formally introduced to his music, it's the underpinning of, a lot of popular music today. And I think a lot of the artists, like specifically the ones I talked about, like Kendrick Lamar, like D'Angelo, they're coming back to music and getting away from just samples and purely digital representations of sound. They're using musicians. They're writing. They're performing with bands. So I think, and they understand. Their musicians clearly understand how they are connected to the music. So it's exactly what you said. It's intended to say that Miles is present, Miles lives, Miles is now, and the story of Miles Davis continues through his music, which when you ask Miles if you wanted to know who he was, he would say, listen to my music. That was always how he most clearly defined himself to himself, was through his music. So I just wanted to sort of underline that. And another cool thing about that last scene for me is that we were generously given the use of Miles' paintings by his family. So the paintings, the images that you see behind the band, behind Herbie and Wayne and Rob and myself, are Miles' paintings, which are incredible. And we put them on that board, and they also gave us the permission to manipulate them and make parts of them move and different, have things come in relief and recede, and which is, us painting Miles' paintings, which again, for me, was very important that we continued to create on top of his creations. And we were very glad the family gave us the permission to do that, again, in the spirit of what I believe Miles was always about, which is keep it moving, keep moving forward, keep it going.
Hi, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A friend of mine reminded me last night that he donated to your campaign at a time when it was like between like a gap of rent, like I need this amount for rent. And I was like, why? He said, because Don needed it. Don, the artist, needed it. So in the last question, do you want to kind of say a thank you to the people who heard you as an artist asking?
Well, I said it then, and I'll say it now, and I continue to say it, and I've said it in the movie, that, we needed everything that went into our being able to to make this film. It's an independently financed film. We were fortunate to be picked up by Sony Pictures Classics for distribution, and I Am Global for foreign distribution. But before they, got this product, we had to get it made. And one of the components was this gap financing that came together through crowdfunding, which we were kind of ambivalent about whether or not to do it. We didn't know if it would say something strange about the movie. Would that mean that the movie is not, no one believes in it? What would it really say to do it? It was very new to us. It wasn't something that I had known that many movies had done before. But we needed it. And yeah, I'm very appreciative of everyone that came on board to help that happen.
Don, thank you.
Thank you.
Emayatzy. Thanks, Michael.